Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Today, I am with our CFP Anya on the team. So I'm, of course, Josh. We're both with Dunhill Financial. So today, we wanted to talk about credit scores. So your US credit score is probably the last thing that you think about as an expat while you're moving abroad, but it can be something well worth remembering, particularly if you're ever thinking about returning to the US. That's because upon your return, you might be looking for new credit or auto loans, buying a house, or just looking at getting good pricing on insurance. So maintaining good credit is important, even if it might not seem that interesting in the interim. Still something to stay on top of. So that's why we thought it'd be a good idea to talk about this today. It's just something that presents a unique challenge for someone who's been living abroad and now moving back to the US. Credit scores are not something that's really shared between countries. Some countries may not even have such a system. So it's just really important that we consider how we build or maintain that credit score over time. So just to go over the basics a bit, I'll just turn it over to Anya and she'll just take us through those.
Thank you, Josh. So we want to go over first what really influences your credit score and how it's really built. So the main thing we want to look at is, of course, your payment history. That's the obvious one. Have you been making your payments on time? You definitely want to keep it up to maintain a good credit score. Another fact, maybe a little bit less known, that's influencing your credit score is how much of your credit are you utilizing. And so, for example, let's say you've got a credit card with a $10,000 available balance. For a really good impact on your credit score, you would want to use maybe just about a third of that 10,000. So if you are in that position and you're using $9,900 from that credit card, you might want to scale back, maybe spread it across different cards. But you definitely want to pay attention how much of that credit you're utilizing. Another factor that's also important is the length of your credit history. How long have you had these accounts? And so for our expats that are abroad, looking to maybe consolidate, maybe you have 7 different credit cards and you don't need all of them, you'll be closing some of those. Pay attention to which ones you're actually closing. The ones that are your oldest cards have a really good impact on your credit. So maybe consider closing some of the newer ones from that perspective. Of course, if a good credit score is key. Another aspect of credit scoring is how many new applications have you had in the recent past. The more hard inquiries you had from different companies, the lesser or the lower your credit score will be. And finally, the credit mix. What kind of credit are you utilizing? Credit reporting agencies like to see different types of credits, so mortgages, auto loans, credit cards. A variety of credit is generally good. So those are some of the main items that we pay attention to when we look at how credit scores are calculated. Now, Josh, from a practical perspective, do you want to show us real quick or talk a little bit about how do we actually pull a credit report?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Anya. So we know a bit about what's helpful in that regard, but how do you actually do it? There's a couple of different ways you can go about it. So there's a couple of different websites that Anya and I know of are, well, annualcreditreport.com is one of them, though both of us are generally more particular towards what's called Credit Karma, so creditkarma.com. So basically, the key advantage there is, well, you can check your credit there for free. You can check it throughout the year and just basically see how everything's going on there. One of the cons there is that it may not be available if you're outside the United States. So perhaps if you have a VPN or a virtual private network, if you've heard of that, that might be a solution to that. Just something to be aware of. But nevertheless, what you can do on there is you just enter your information, so like last 4 of social and other personal information, answer some security questions, and voila, there you have your credit score. And so that'll just right away just give you a great indication of where you currently stand. And therefore, if you're looking at maybe building credit or just protecting the credit you have, It'll also give you recommendations about which cards you may qualify for, which can also be useful information. One thing that Anya and I find particularly useful about this is you can actually go in and get a bit more information about any active or closed accounts you have. So some people might not be aware that they have some cards that are currently outstanding. This has other information about those cards, about the current balance, the credit limit. These are other aspects that you can take into consideration and just have them just as like a all in a one-stop shop sort of affair to make things a bit easier in that regard. So that's basically the idea behind it, is just that way you'd have somewhere where you can just check and see if everything is up to snuff, so to speak, in your credit situation. And if there's any adverse or unexpected information, that kind of gets into what we can do about if there's been some particularly aspects of identity fraud or something like that. So it is generally a good idea to stay on top of that. Aside from that, on a more general note, it's a good idea to hold on to at least one of your credit cards, ideally the one with the lowest or no fees, and maybe the one you've had the longest. Try to keep it active by taking at least a few small purchases a year and paying off your cards on time, of course. On the other hand, if you have no credit history, you might have an option to apply for a secured credit card. This is something that would probably also show up on Credit Karma as a recommendation if you have credit to build. That's where you just basically deposit a set amount, and that establishes a line of credit for you on that balance. And so, like I said, you can build your credit that way, just like you would with a normal card. And over time, you could eventually switch over to an unsecured credit card once you have that established credit history. But I know I touched a bit on protecting our identity, just in case we do find some like kind of oops or unexpected info in there. So Anya, maybe you can just expound a bit on what to do in those sorts of cases.
Absolutely. Thank you, Josh. So I think all of us are probably familiar with those notices, data breaches that you've been affected. I can think of at least 3 this year that I've had. And so all of that means that your data is out there, your social security number is out there somewhere, and people are trying to get to it. So if you're looking to protect it, there's different ways to approach that. One way would be to sign up for credit monitoring. There are different plans available out there where they'll alert you if something is changing on your credit report. Most of these sites and services have a monthly fee or an annual fee, but it is definitely an option. Another option that I personally prefer as an expat, given that I don't plan to apply for credit anytime soon, so definitely not in the next couple of months, I have my credit reports frozen, meaning nobody can really get to them. Even if they have my social security number, even if they have all my info, the credit report is frozen, they cannot use it. Now, if I was to apply for credit, I can go to each credit reporting agency, take the freeze off temporarily, for example, for a period of 2 weeks when I'll be applying for credit, and then I can put it back off or back on. In the past, each credit reporting agency had fees associated with this, but with so many data breaches, they actually dealt away with the fees. So this is actually a free way to lock up your credit. So I think that's an excellent solution for a lot of our expats that do not plan to utilize credit anytime soon and really protect their identity.
Great. Well, thanks for all that insight, Anya. So we hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions about anything we've covered here today, or would like to start a conversation about your particular credit situation as an expat living abroad, no need to be shy. Just feel free to reach out to our team at info@dunhillfinancial.com. We'd be happy to provide you some useful resources like what you see on the screen, a guide we have on protecting your credit score when abroad from back in June, and on maintaining your credit and just helping you on the path to either building or protecting your credit so that your eventual return to the US is just as smooth as possible. So thanks for listening, and don't be afraid to get in touch. And thanks very much for your time today, Anya.
Thank you.